The multiverse is a tapestry of infinite realities, each with its own immutable laws. But what happens when a thread from one universe tears through into another, bringing power that shouldn't exist? When a being who has walked among humanity since its dawn, who has conquered worlds and shattered civilizations, finds himself in a reality where power is bought, sold, and marketed like soap. The collision doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It begins with a crack in the sky above New York City, and the fall of something that should never have been allowed to exist in this world. The rift opened at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, directly above Times Square. Not a portal. Portals suggested structure, intention, control. This was a wound. Reality tore like overstressed fabric, and for exactly 4 seconds, pedestrians with phones aimed upward captured footage of something impossible. A glimpse into somewhere else. A throne room of gold. Machinery that breathed. And then, falling through the closing tear, a figure wreathed in light that cameras struggled to properly focus on, as though the physics of recording technology couldn't quite agree on what they were witnessing. The Emperor of Mankind hit the ground with enough force to crack the pavement in a 20-foot radius. He landed on one knee, gold-armored hand pressed against asphalt, the impact creating a shockwave that shattered every window within a city block. Car alarms screamed. People scattered, their primal hindbrain understanding what their conscious mind refused to accept. Predator. Apex predator. Something that killed not because it was cruel, but because killing was simply what it did best, refined across 10,000 years into an art form. He rose slowly, and the afternoon sun caught on armor that shouldn't exist in this universe. Baroque, golden, inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Beneath it, a face that cameras would struggle to capture clearly. Not because of any supernatural effect, but because the human brain couldn't quite process something that ancient wearing human features. Eyes that had witnessed the birth and death of empires regarded the towering advertisements, the corporate logos, the endless cascade of product placement that turned Times Square into a cathedral of capitalism. Interesting, the Emperor said, and his voice carried despite the chaos, resonating in a frequency that bypassed ears entirely and spoke directly to something deeper in the human nervous system. Humanity has fallen further than I imagined possible. He took 3 steps forward, and the crowd's retreat accelerated into panic. Somewhere, someone was screaming about a Supe attack. The Emperor's head tilted fractionally, processing the term, the implication. Enhanced humans. Here, in this reality. His psychic senses, still adjusting to a universe without the warp's endless screaming, reached outward cautiously. No demons, no chaos corruption, no immaterium at all. Just baseline reality, and within it, pinpricks of artificial power. Clumsy, crude, but present. His psychic recalibration was interrupted by the wail of sirens and the screech of tires. Yenwai PD cruisers formed a perimeter at a safe distance, safe being relative when dealing with something that had just fallen from a literal hole in the sky. Officers took position behind car doors, weapons drawn but not yet aimed, because protocol for dimensional rifts and golden giants wasn't exactly covered in academy training. "This is the NYPD," a voice crackled through a megaphone, trying for authoritative and landing somewhere near terrified. "Put your hands where we can see them and get down on the ground. Now." The Emperor regarded them with the same mild interest a biologist might show bacteria. His psychic senses cataloged each officer, fear responses, elevated cortisol, the particular cocktail of adrenaline and training holding discipline in place. Baseline humans. No enhancement. Fragile. In the Imperium, and these would be planetary defense force at best. Here, apparently, they represented law enforcement for a major population center. "I require information," the Emperor stated, taking another step forward. "The nature of this reality, the current state of human civilization, the source of the enhanced individuals I sense distributed throughout this urban sprawl. Sir, this is your final warning." The Emperor's eyes flashed just once, and every officer within line of sight froze. Not psychic domination, he was still recalibrating, learning this universe's frequencies. Just presence. The weight of something that had stared down Primarchs and made demons hesitate. In the Imperium, this was how he'd ended wars before they began. Here, it had a different effect. At Vought Tower, 14 miles south, monitors exploded with activity. What the fuck is that? Someone in the Crisis Management Center blurted out, staring at the live feed from Times Square. The figure on screen shouldn't exist. Couldn't exist. Every sensor they had, and Vought had sensors for everything from compound V traces to anomalous electromagnetic activity, was screaming contradictions. Massive energy signature. No compound V present. Armor composition unknown. Biometric data. Error. Threat assessment. Error. Ashley Barrett. Freshly promoted to head of superhero management and already regretting every life choice that led to this office. Grabbed a phone. "Get Homelander, now! And someone tell me what the absolute fuck I'm looking at." In the penthouse suite reserved for the Seven, Homelander stood at the window, cape flowing despite no wind inside, watching the news coverage with an expression somewhere between curiosity and irritation. Another Supe. Always another Supe. Someone trying to steal his spotlight, his adoration, his rightful place at the center of everything. But this one was different. The footage kept glitching, the cameras struggling with something about the figure's presence. And that entrance, tearing through the sky itself, landing hard enough to crater pavement, standing in the middle of Times Square like he owned it. "Sir." A-Train skidded to a stop in the doorway, vibrating with nervous energy. "Vought wants you down there. Something came through some kind of portal and..." "I saw," Homelander said quietly, dangerously. His laser vision flickered red at the corners of his eyes as he X-rayed the distant figure, and stopped. The armor registered, and the human form inside registered, but something about the biology made his vision skip, falter, like trying to look at something that existed in more dimensions than his eyes could process. No one made Homelander's vision falter. "Get the team," he said, already floating off the ground. "We're going to have a conversation with our new friend about airspace regulations and respect." Back in Times Square, the Emperor's patience, infinite when dealing with strategic matters, non-existent for bureaucratic posturing, wore through. The officers were still frozen, caught between training and survival instinct. The crowd had fallen back to what they thought was safe distance. Phones recording everything because this was the world they'd built, where spectacle mattered more than survival. "This civilization requires extensive correction," the Emperor murmured, and began walking south toward the concentration of enhanced humans his senses detected. Toward the tallest building in the vicinity, whose architecture screamed corporate headquarters with the subtlety of a chain axe. Toward Vought. Behind him, the crack where he'd entered this universe had sealed completely, leaving only questions and the growing certainty that whatever had just arrived in the boys' universe, it hadn't come to play by their rules. If you want to see more crossover battles and unexpected universe collisions, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and universe you'd want to see in the comments below. let's explore the infinite together. The Emperor of mankind had entered a universe built on commodified heroism, corporate control, and manufactured power. They would learn quickly what happened when something genuinely ancient encountered their modern fiction. The first lesson would be delivered in minutes, at supersonic speed, by a man who thought himself a god. He was about to meet something older. The Emperor walked south through Manhattan like a conqueror surveying newly claimed territory, and the city reacted the way cities do when confronted with the genuinely inexplicable. It recorded everything while understanding nothing. Pedestrians scattered, then returned with phones raised. News helicopters circled at what they hoped was safe altitude. Social media exploded with theories ranging from new Vought product launch to viral marketing campaign to actual alien invasion. No one considered the truth: that something from a universe where humanity had conquered the stars through blood and faith had just crossed into a world where humans had barely left their own atmosphere. The Emperor's psychic senses continued their calibration, learning the frequencies of this reality. Without the warp's screaming chaos, the mental landscape was almost painfully quiet, clean, sterile. He could feel the enhanced humans scattered throughout the city, bright points of artificial power grafted onto baseline human templates. Crude work. Whoever had created these beings understood genetics the way a child understood fire. Enough to make it burn, not enough to control what it consumed. One cluster of enhanced signatures moved toward him at speeds that suggested flight capability. 7 distinct patterns, the largest burning brightest, strongest but undisciplined, wielding power like a club rather than a scalpel. The Emperor stopped in the middle of Park Avenue, causing a cab to swerve and crash into a parked delivery truck. He ignored the collision, the screaming, the chaos. His attention focused upward. They came from the northeast, on silhouettes against the afternoon sun that resolved into costumes designed for maximum visual impact. The 7, America's premier superhero team, Vought's flagship product. And leading them, cape billowing in genuine wind this time, was Homelander. The Emperor watched them descend with the detached interest of a space marine observing poorly trained guardsmen. The leader landed first, 15 feet away, boots touching down with careful precision that suggested someone accustomed to controlling descent velocity. The others followed. A speedster vibrating with nervous energy, a woman with genuine combat bearing despite the impractical costume, an armored figure whose suit read as Kevlar and lightweight composites, others whose power signatures registered as secondary threats at best. But the leader, the one they called Homelander. And he stood with the posture of someone who'd never been genuinely challenged, never faced something that could truly hurt him. The Emperor recognized it immediately, the bearing of a being who'd mistaken dominance over the weak for actual strength. He'd seen it before, in Primarchs before their first real test, in Xenos warlords before he'd shown them the difference between power and mastery. "Okay," Homelander said, voice carrying that peculiar American accent that suggested Midwestern origins overlaid with years of media training. "So, you want to tell me what the fuck you think you're doing crashing into my city dressed like a Renaissance fair got lost on the way to Comic-Con?" The Emperor said nothing. His eyes, gold that seemed to shift in the light, pupils that dilated not according to photons, but according to some other stimulus entirely, swept across the assembled team. Assessment complete in seconds. The leader, significant threat, requires full attention. The woman, combat trained, respect warranted. The speedster, dangerous if allowed initiative. The rest, acceptable collateral if conflict escalates. "I'm talking to you," Homelander continued, floating up 2 feet off the ground now, establishing dominance through elevation. You see, in this country, we have rules. And one of those rules is that when Homelander fucking asks you a question, you answer. So let's try again. Who are you and what brings you to New York? You style yourself a leader, the Emperor said finally, and his voice made several members of the Seven flinch. Not loud, volume was irrelevant, but layered, resonant, speaking to parts of the nervous system that predated language. Yet you understand nothing of true command. You wear your strength like a costume, something to be displayed rather than wielded with purpose. Homelander's eyes narrowed. The air temperature around him increased fractionally as his laser vision began to charge. Oh, we've got a philosopher. That's cute. A-Train, check him for weapons. A-Train vibrated in place, hesitating. Something about the golden figure made his enhanced nervous system scream warnings. But Homelander was looking at him, waiting, and disappointing Homelander was a good way to end up a red smear on a wall somewhere nobody would find you. He moved, supersonic in 3 steps, the world blurring around him as he circled the target, looking for weapons, weaknesses, anything that would explain why this guy seemed so unconcerned about having the Seven's undivided attention. The Emperor's hand moved. It shouldn't have connected. A-Train was moving at speeds that made bullets seem sluggish, his compound V-enhanced physiology allowing perception and reaction times measured in microseconds. But the hand was simply there, in his path, waiting. A-Train's momentum carried him directly into a grip that closed around his throat like a tank hatch slamming shut. The Speedster's legs blurred, still running, feet skating across pavement as he was held suspended in a one-handed grip that didn't waver, despite the kinetic energy trying to tear him free. His hands clawed at the armored gauntlet, nails breaking against alloy that predated this universe's periodic table. Fast, the Emperor observed clinically. But speed without strategy is merely expensive suicide. He set A-Train down almost gently, releasing him. The Speedster stumbled back, gasping, hand at his throat, where pressure points had been compressed with surgical precision. Not crushed. That would have been wasteful. Just demonstrated. Okay, Homelander said, voice dropping to that dangerous quiet that preceded ultraviolence. Okay, so you can catch A-Train. That's cute, really. But you clearly don't understand how this works. He gestured broadly at the surrounding buildings, the watching cameras, the helicopters circling. This is all mine. Every camera, every viewer, every person watching right now is going to see what happens when someone disrespects me in my city. Your city, the Emperor repeated. You claim dominion over this territory. By what right? What have you built? What have you conquered? You patrol streets secured by others and call yourself protector. You pose for cameras while actual governance occurs without your input. You are not a ruler. You are a mascot. Queen Maeve inhaled sharply. Nobody talked to Homelander like that. Nobody who wanted to continue existing in recognizable form. Homelander's smile froze on his face, then slowly twisted into something that had nothing to do with happiness. A mascot. His eyes lit up, twin beams of concentrated heat vision lancing out. The Emperor didn't dodge. The beam struck his chest plate and scattered, diffusing across armor that had withstood plasma weaponry from craft worlds and the wrath of greater demons. The gold glowed faintly where the heat concentrated, and then cooled instantly as the Emperor's enhanced biology regulated temperature through his armor's interface. Insufficient, the Emperor stated. Homelander poured more power into the beams. The air shimmered, asphalt began to melt in a widening pool around the Emperor's feet. Windows in nearby buildings cracked from thermal stress. Still, the Emperor stood, arms at his sides, not even raising a hand to deflect the onslaught. Then he moved. Supersonic. No flight, just raw physical propulsion that cratered the pavement and carried him across the 15-foot gap before Homelander's enhanced perceptions could register the transition from stationary to moving. The Emperor's fist, still gauntleted, struck Homelander in the sternum with enough force to break the sound barrier. Homelander shot backward like a missile, through a parked bus, through the concrete pillar beyond, tumbling through the air until he corrected his flight path 50 yards distant. He touched down, hand to his chest, eyes wide. His suit, bulletproof, fireproof, rated to withstand impacts that would vaporize baseline humans, had torn. Blood seeped from his nose. For the first time in Homelander's existence, someone had made him bleed. "You have power," the Emperor said, walking forward as Homelander's team scattered to flanking positions. But power without discipline, without purpose beyond self-aggrandizement, is merely noise. I have fought beings that would consider you an appetizer. I have killed gods that made you seem pedestrian. If you truly wish to test yourself against me, then come. But understand, I am not one of your performative villains. I do not posture. I do not boast. I simply am. The cameras captured everything. Vaught's crisis center erupted in panic. The boys, watching from their safe house through hacked feeds, sat in stunned silence. And Homelander, tasting his own blood for the first time since childhood injections, felt something he'd forgotten was possible. Fear. Homelander wiped blood from his nose with the back of his gloved hand, staring at the crimson smear like it was a foreign substance he'd never encountered. Around him, the Seven had frozen in various combat stances. Queen Maeve with fists raised, Black Noir drawing tactical knives, Starlight's hands glowing with gathered energy. But none of them moved. Because Homelander hadn't given the order, and because the golden figure standing in a crater of his own, making radiated something that made even Compound V-enhanced instincts scream warnings about engaging. "You made me bleed," Homelander said quietly, wonder and rage mixing in equal measure. His head tilted, X-ray vision activating, trying again to penetrate whatever the stranger wore. The armor registered. Dense, impossibly dense, molecular structure his vision couldn't properly resolve. And beneath it, the figure's biology. Wrong. Not human. Not entirely. Cells that functioned like human cells, but with efficiencies that violated thermodynamics. A cardiovascular system that seemed to generate more energy than it consumed. Bones that his vision interpreted as having a crystalline substructure that shouldn't exist in organic material. "You're not a Supa," Homelander continued, floating higher now, establishing vertical advantage. "Compound V leaves signatures, markers. You don't have them. So what are you? Some kind of alien? Some fucking experiment from Russia or China? Because whatever you are, you just made the biggest mistake of your life." The Emperor watched him rise, calculating trajectories and response patterns. The enhanced human had flight capability, genuine levitation, not jump jets or wing structures. Fascinating. The mechanism appeared to be some form of tactile telekinesis, the enhanced individual unconsciously extending force fields that negated gravity and provided propulsion. Crude compared to Imperial gravitic technology, but effective within atmospheric limitations. "I am human," the Emperor said, and there was something almost sad in his tone. "I was born on this world, though in an age your civilization has forgotten existed. I walked among humanity when your ancestors had barely learned to make fire. a united Terra through conquest and vision, forged an imperium that spanned the stars and built an empire you cannot imagine. He paused. And I have seen what humanity becomes when guided by fools who mistake power for wisdom. Homelander's laugh was sharp, brittle. Oh, this is good. This is really good. So you're what? The immortal? Some kind of god-king from ancient times? His voice rose, addressing the cameras he knew were broadcasting everything. Folks, we've got ourselves a genuine crazy person here. Claims he's, 10,000 years old? Built an empire? Buddy, I hate to break it to you, but the only empire that matters is Vought, and the only god in this equation is floating right above you. Homelander? Queen Maeve's voice carried warning. Maybe we should... Should what? Homelander snapped, eyes never leaving the Emperor. Back down? From some cosplayer with a good right hook? No. No. What we're gonna do is show this fucking lunatic what happens when you challenge gods. He looked to Black Noir. Take him. Black Noir moved with professional efficiency, reading the target's stance, looking for openings. His enhanced physiology wasn't as flashy as Homelander's. No flight, no laser vision, just strength, speed, and durability multiplied to superhuman levels. But he had something most Supes lacked: actual combat training. Military background before the V, Black Ops experience that taught him how to kill efficiently rather than dramatically. He came in low and fast, twin blades aimed for joints in the armor where flexibility required gaps. The Emperor's psychic senses, still not at full operational capacity but functional enough, registered the attack vector before Black Noir closed half the distance. He pivoted, armored hand catching the assassin's wrist mid-thrust, redirecting momentum into a throw that sent Black Noir crashing through a storefront window. Starlight fired. Twin beams of concentrated light energy that struck the Emperor's armor and scattered into prismatic displays. Maeve charged from the flank, drawing on decades of combat experience, aiming a haymaker at the stranger's head with enough force to decapitate a baseline human. The Emperor caught her fist mid-swing. You have discipline, he told her, applying pressure that made reinforced super bones creak. More than the others. You've seen actual combat, made actual choices under fire. There might be something salvageable in you. Maeve's other fist came up in a desperate uppercut. The Emperor released her, stepping back, letting her stumble forward off balance. Not mocking, analyzing. She recovered quickly, dropping into a fighter's stance that spoke of training rather than instinct. What the fuck are you? She demanded. Someone who recognizes potential when I see it, the Emperor replied. Then his eyes flashed, and Maeve felt something press against her mind. Not invasive, not yet. Just presence. Like standing next to a bonfire and feeling its heat without being burned. Tell me, warrior, do you serve willingly, or do you wear a leash? The question hit harder than any physical blow. Maeve's expression flickered. Shock, fear, something that might have been desperate hope, before she locked it down. But the Emperor had seen enough. A train, recovered from his earlier humiliation and high on enough compound 5 to make his heart race dangerously, blurred into motion again. This time he wasn't trying to grab, he was trying to hit, supersonic punches from multiple angles simultaneously, using speed to compensate for inferior strength. Further, the Emperor's psychic senses tracked each trajectory. His enhanced reflexes, products of genetic engineering that made Compound V seem like crude chemistry, responding with mechanical precision. He caught A-Train mid-strike, gripping the Speedster's extended arm, and used the momentum to swing him like a club into starlight. Both Supes went down in a tangle of limbs and electricity. Enough! Homelander snarled. His laser vision charged to full power, not the focused beams from before, but wide dispersal, designed to saturate an area rather than pierce. He fired, the beams sweeping across the street, cutting through vehicles, igniting fires, deliberately targeting the space around the Emperor to force him into defensive posture. The Emperor raised one hand, and reality bent. It wasn't psychic shielding. That required the warp's energies. He was still learning to channel power without it. This was cruder, fundamental. He reached out with his will, with the accumulated force of 10,000 years of discipline, and simply insisted that the energy redirect. The beams curved, impossibly, arcing away from him and dissipating into the sky. Impossible, Homelander breathed. Psychic manipulation of electromagnetic radiation, the Emperor explained, lowering his hand. Your laser vision is simply concentrated light and heat. Crude, but effective against unshielded targets. I have faced weapons that boiled atmospheres and shattered planets. You will need to try harder. Homelander's composure cracked completely. He shot forward, abandoning tactics for raw fury, fists swinging with strength that could shatter tank armor. The Emperor met him head-on, and for 5 seconds, they traded blows that generated sonic booms and shattered windows across 3 city blocks. Homelander's speed in flight gave him mobility. The Emperor's skill and experience gave him precision. Every exchange drove them apart, then brought them together again. 2 forces that shouldn't exist in this universe, attempting to destroy each other. Then the Emperor's fist connected with Homelander's jaw in a strike calculated not just for power, but for exact force vectors that bypassed durability through resonance. Homelander's head snapped back. More blood. The impact sent him spinning through the air, crashing into a parked news van, hard enough to crumple it into abstract sculpture. The Emperor stood in the center of Park Avenue, surrounded by scattered Supes and burning vehicles, not even breathing hard. His armor showed scorch marks from Homelander's laser vision, dents from impacts, but nothing that compromised integrity. He looked at the cameras, knowing whoever controlled these enhanced humans was watching. I am the Emperor of mankind, he announced, voice carrying across the city through every broadcast, every social media stream, every hacked feed the boys were monitoring. I have not come to conquer your world. I have come because reality itself placed me here. But understand this. I will not be commanded. I will not be controlled. And I will not tolerate the degradation of humanity I see paraded as heroism. Homelander pulled himself from the wreckage, cape torn, costume shredded, blood streaming from his nose and mouth. He looked like he wanted to charge again, looked like he wanted to burn everything in sight. But something in the Emperor's gaze stopped him. The weight of genuine certainty, the knowledge that another exchange wouldn't end differently. This isn't over, Homelander managed. No, the Emperor agreed. It has only begun. But the next time we speak, come prepared for actual war, not performance. He turned and continued south, toward Vought Tower, leaving the 7 scattered and bloodied in his wake. Behind him, emergency services swarmed the scene. Ahead, he sensed the concentration of enhanced signatures that marked his true destination, the source of this universe's corrupted power. In a grimy safe house in Brooklyn, Billy Butcher lowered his binoculars and looked at his team with something between horror and vindication. Well, he said slowly, I think we just found our nuclear option against Homelander. Huey stared at the screen, showing replay footage of the Emperor casually redirecting laser vision. Billy, that thing just beat the 7, all of them, without even trying. What makes you think we could control it? Butcher's smile was sharp and terrible. Who said anything about control, Huey? You don't control a hurricane. You just point it at what needs destroying and get the fuck out of the way. Vought Tower's Crisis Management Center had descended into controlled chaos. 18 floors below the penthouse suites where the 7 licked their wounds, 43 analysts, PR specialists, and corporate strategists tried to process what their surveillance network had just witnessed. Every screen displayed different angles of the same impossibility. Their flagship product, their invincible asset, their carefully cultivated god figure, bleeding and beaten in the middle of Park Avenue. Stan Edgar stood at the center of it all, hands clasped behind his back, expression unchanged from his typical mask of corporate serenity. He'd built Vought into a multi-billion-dollar empire by understanding one fundamental truth. Everything could be commodified, weaponized, or eliminated, when the question was simply determining which category this new variable belonged to. Analysis, he said quietly, and the room fell silent. Ashley Barrett, tablet clutched like a shield, stepped forward. Sir, we're still processing, but initial assessment is concerning. No compound V signature. Armor composition unknown. Material science can't identify the alloy. Energy readings are off the charts but don't match any known power source. And the individual claims to be... She swallowed. 10,000 years old and from some kind of interstellar empire. Claims, Stan repeated. What does evidence suggest? A tech analyst cleared his throat nervously. Sir, we ran audio analysis on his voice. There's something wrong with it. The waveforms show harmonic frequencies that shouldn't be possible from human vocal cords. And it's like he's speaking in multiple octaves simultaneously, some of them subsonic. And thermal imaging during the fight showed his body temperature remained constant despite exertion. No elevated heart rate, no increased respiration. He fought the 7 and didn't even break a sweat. Stan turned to face the main screen, which showed frozen footage of the Emperor's fist connecting with Homelander's face. Frame-by-frame analysis captured the exact moment of impact. Homelander's invulnerable skin compressing, blood vessels rupturing, the kinetic force propagating through tissue that had never experienced trauma. Recommendations, Stan said. Evacuation? Someone suggested weakly. If he's heading here. He is heading here, Stan interrupted. Our tracking has him 3 miles out, maintaining a walking pace directly toward this building. He's not hiding. He's not strategizing. He's simply coming, which tells me something important. He doesn't view us as a threat. He views us as an objective. We could evacuate anyway, Ashley tried. Get essential personnel out, minimize casualties, and signal weakness to every camera in the city. Stan's voice carried just enough edge to cut. No, we handle this the way we handle every crisis, by controlling the narrative. Get me our best negotiator. Get me a psychological profile worked up from whatever footage we have, and get me every asset we have on standby. He paused, including the ones we don't advertise. In the medical bay on the 40th floor, Homelander sat shirtless on an examination table while a terrified doctor attempted to treat injuries that shouldn't exist, but the cuts were already healing. Compound V's regenerative properties working overtime. But they'd existed at all, which was the problem. Maeve stood nearby, arms crossed, watching him with an expression somewhere between concern and calculation. Stop staring at me, Homelander snapped, not looking at her. You're bleeding, Maeve said flatly. You never bleed. None of us have ever seen you bleed. Yeah, well, congratulations. Historic fucking moment. He jerked away from the doctor's probing hands. Get out, all of you, out. The medical staff evacuated with obvious relief. Maeve didn't move. I said out, Maeve. He could have killed you, she said quietly. That last punch, I saw the angle, the force. He pulled it, He could have caved in your skull, and he chose not to. Homelander's laser vision flickered. He didn't pull shit. I was adjusting my... Don't. Maeve's voice cut through his denial. Don't do that thing where you rewrite reality to fit your ego. We both saw what happened. He's stronger than you, faster than you in close combat. And whatever that thing he did with your laser vision was. She shook her head. We're not equipped for this. We. Homelander stood, moving into her space, using his height advantage. There is no we here, Maeve. There's me, and there's everyone else who remembers their fucking place. You think because some costume freak got a lucky shot in, suddenly the hierarchy changes? I'm still Homelander. I'm still the strongest, the best, the most afraid. Maeve finished. I can see it in your eyes. You met something you can't intimidate, can't dominate, and now you don't know what to do. For a moment, a Homelander's mask slipped completely. Beneath the bravado, the narcissism, the carefully constructed God complex, was something raw and desperate and utterly human. Fear of inadequacy, of being proven ordinary, of discovering that the pedestal he'd been placed on was actually a cage. Then the mask reconstructed itself, layer by layer, until he was smiling that terrible smile again. Get out, Maeve. Before I forget, we're supposed to be on the same team. She left, but not before he saw the pity in her eyes. That was somehow worse than the beating. 3 miles north, the Emperor continued his approach, and the city adapted around him. Police established perimeters that dissolved as he approached, officers receiving orders to observe but not engage. News helicopters maintained altitude. I'm broadcasting his steady progress to an audience of millions. Social media had already dubbed him the Golden God. #Ancient Alien was trending, and conspiracy theorists were having a field day. The Emperor ignored all of it. His psychic senses had fully calibrated now, adjusting to the universe's frequencies, and he was beginning to understand the scope of what he'd fallen into. A world where enhanced humans existed as commodities, where power was franchised, marketed, sold to the highest bidder, where those with strength operated not as warriors or leaders, but as corporate assets, leashed and controlled by baseline humans wielding nothing but wealth and influence. It was obscene, it was offensive, and it was, unfortunately, effective. In the Imperium, power flowed from those with strength to conquer and hold territory. Here, power flowed through systems, legal frameworks, media control, economic leverage. The enhanced individuals he'd fought weren't apex predators. They were attack dogs. Well-fed, well-trained, but ultimately collared. Which meant the real enemy wasn't the superhuman in the cape. It was the system that created him. Fascinating, the Emperor murmured, dodging a delivery truck whose driver was too fixated on his phone to watch the road. Humanity has learned to chain its own evolution. No wonder this timeline never reached the stars. He stopped at an intersection, causing traffic chaos as vehicles swerved around him. Across the street, a massive digital billboard flickered and changed, displaying not an advertisement, but a live feed. A man in an expensive suit, dark-skinned, expression calm, regarding the camera with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the smartest person in any room. Hello, Stan Edgar's voice carried from speakers embedded in the billboard. I am Stan Edgar, CEO of Vought International. I believe you're heading to my building. Might I suggest we speak first, rather than continuing this dramatic approach? I'm extending an invitation. Top floor, my office. I promise you a conversation more productive than fighting my employees in the street. The Emperor studied the image. Baseline human, no enhancement. Yet the way he spoke, the absolute absence of fear in his posture. This was someone accustomed to controlling forces far more powerful than himself. A handler, a manipulator, and the kind of individual who'd risen to power not through strength, but through understanding how to weaponize others' strength. Interesting, the Emperor said, knowing his voice would carry to whatever surveillance captured it. Very well. I accept your invitation, human. Let us discuss the future of your species. The billboard flickered off. 2 blocks away, Vought Tower loomed, glass and steel reaching toward the sky, crowned with a logo that represented everything the Emperor found distasteful about this timeline's trajectory. But somewhere in that building was the architect of this corrupted system. And if the Emperor understood anything after 10 millennia of conquest, it was this. To truly change a civilization, you either convinced or eliminated its leadership. He would determine which category Stan Edgar belonged to shortly. In the safe house, the boys watched the exchange on their hacked feeds. Butcher leaned back, lighting a cigarette despite Huey's protests about the smoke detector. Well, fuck me, Butcher said admiringly. Edgar's got balls, I'll give him that. Inviting the thing that just beat the 7 into his office for a chat. It's a trap, MM stated flatly. Has to be. No way he doesn't have something planned. Oh, it's definitely a trap, Butcher agreed. Question is whether our golden friend gives a shit. He zoomed in on frozen footage of the Emperor's face. Look at him. That's not anger, that's not fear, that's curiosity. He wants to know what Edgar's selling. Should we? Huey started. Do absolutely fucking nothing, Butcher interrupted. Right now, we sit back and watch the Titans have their little tea party. Because whatever happens in that office is going to reshape everything. And when the dust settles, that's when we make our move. Frenchie, quiet until now, spoke up. And if the Emperor kills Edgar, takes over Vought, becomes the new monster we must fight? Butcher's smile was cold. Then at least it'll be a monster that bleeds. We saw Homelander land hits, means he's not invincible, which means he's killable. And that, mon ami, is more hope than we've had in years. The Emperor reached Vought Tower's entrance, where security had wisely cleared a path. He entered the lobby without breaking stride, heading for elevators that would carry him toward his meeting with the architect of this civilization's corruption. Behind him, the city held its breath. Ahead, Stan Edgar waited with plans within plans, ready to deploy resources the public didn't know existed. And somewhere in the building, Homelander nursed his wounds and plotted revenge against the thing that had made him feel human again. The collision had only begun. The elevator rose silently through Vought Tower's 99 floors, carrying the Emperor toward the apex of this civilization's most powerful corporate entity. The interior was all polished steel and subdued lighting, designed to convey wealth and power through minimalist aesthetics. Music played softly from hidden speakers, some insipid melody designed to soothe nervous visitors. The Emperor ignored it, his psychic senses extending through the building's structure, cataloging the enhanced signatures scattered throughout. 17 enhanced humans in the building currently. Most clustered on lower floors, security personnel likely, with minor augmentations. 3 significant power signatures on the 40th floor. Probably the team he'd already bested, and at the very top, nothing. Just baseline human biology. Stan Edgar, waiting alone, in either profound confidence or profound stupidity. The Emperor would determine which shortly. The elevator doors opened directly into Edgar's office. No reception area, no secretary. Just immediate access to a space designed to dwarf visitors. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Manhattan, the city spreading out like a circuit board of light and steel. The office itself was austere, a massive desk of dark wood, minimalist furniture, walls lined with awards and photographs documenting Vought's rise to dominance. Stan Edgar stood at the windows, hands clasped behind his back, not turning as the Emperor entered. A power play, establishing that he felt no need to acknowledge threats immediately, that he operated on his own timeline. The Emperor recognized the tactic, or he'd seen it employed by planetary governors and sector lords across the Imperium. It never worked on him. 23 minutes from Times Square to my office, Edgar said, still facing the windows. You could have moved faster. Flew, perhaps, if you possessed that capability. But you walked, at a measured pace, broadcasting your presence, allowing us time to prepare, to analyze, to respond. He turned now, regarding the Emperor with eyes that showed no fear, only calculating interest. That suggests either arrogance or strategy. I suspect both. The Emperor moved to the center of the office, his armor catching the afternoon light streaming through the windows. You control these enhanced humans, the ones calling themselves the Seven. You created them. Created? Edgar smiled slightly. No, Vought created the process, Compound V, decades ago. I simply perfected its monetization, turned a scientific curiosity into a multi-billion-dollar industry. Superheroes as product line, power as franchise. It's quite elegant, really. It's obscene, the Emperor stated. You've taken humanity's next evolutionary step and commodified it. Reduced beings of genuine capability to marketing assets and corporate spokespersons. In my Imperium, those with power served humanity's expansion across the stars. Here, they serve shareholders. Edgar moved to his desk, gesturing to a chair opposite. The Emperor didn't sit. Edgar did, steepling his fingers, completely at ease despite having something that had casually dismantled his premier team standing in his office. Your Imperium, Edgar repeated. Yes, we caught that speech. 10,000 years old. Conquered worlds. Built an empire. Quite a resume. Tell me, in this Imperium of yours, how did you handle those who refused to serve your vision? I gave them a choice, the Emperor said. Join humanity's ascension willingly, or be conquered and incorporated by force. Unity was non-negotiable. The method of achieving it was their decision. So, fascism with extra steps. Survival with purpose, the Emperor corrected. I united Terra when it was a wasteland of competing warlords and techno-barbarian kingdoms. I gave humanity the stars. And yes, I crushed those who would have seen our species remain divided and weak. Because I understood a fundamental truth your civilization has forgotten. Power without purpose is merely noise, and purpose without power is simply wishful thinking. Edgar leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing at his lips. You know, I think you and I might understand each other better than you'd care to admit. We both recognize that power, real power, comes not from strength, but from control. You controlled through military conquest. I control through economic leverage and media manipulation. Different tools, same objective. Directing human behavior toward a specific outcome. The difference, the Emperor said coldly, is that my objective was humanity's expansion beyond Earth. Yours is quarterly earnings reports. Is it? Edgar stood, moving to a wall panel that lit up at his touch, displaying financial charts, demographic data, political influence maps. Vought International operates in 147 countries. We employ over 50,000 people. Our security contracts protect millions. Our pharmaceutical division develops treatments that extend lifespans. Our entertainment division shapes cultural narratives that influence billions." He turned to face the Emperor. "You claim you unified Earth. I've done the same thing through market forces rather than military conquest. Every nation on this planet is dependent to some degree on Vought's products and services. That's unity. That's power." "Unity built on corruption," the Emperor countered. "I've observed your heroes for less than an hour, and already I've identified the rot. The leader, Homelander, is a narcissistic liability one provocation away from mass casualty event. Your warrior woman serves under protest, leashed by fear rather than loyalty. The Speedster is chemically dependent on the very substance that grants him power. These are not humanity's champions. They're symptoms of your civilization's disease." Edgar's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Acknowledgement, perhaps. "You're not wrong. Homelander is problematic, a product of our early attempts at creating controlled superhuman assets. We've learned a great deal since then, but he remains useful. His image sells. His presence maintains public faith in the superhero concept, and his instability, properly managed, can be directed toward desired outcomes." "Until it can't be," the Emperor said. "I've seen this pattern across 1,000 worlds. Enhanced individuals without proper discipline, without genuine purpose beyond self-aggrandizement, inevitably turn on their creators. Your Homelander will eventually decide he no longer requires your permission to act. And when that day comes, how many of your billions die before someone stops him?" "Which brings us to you," Edgar said smoothly. "A being powerful enough to beat Homelander in open combat, with abilities we don't understand and can't replicate. Who claims to represent some alternative vision for humanity's future?" He moved back to his desk, pressing a button. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a steel case. He opened it, extracting a single vial of amber liquid, Compound V. "Tell me, could your genetic engineering skills replicate this, improve it, remove the instabilities that create problems like Homelander?" The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "You're attempting to recruit me." "I'm attempting to determine your value," Edgar corrected. "Everything has value. Everything can be leveraged. You've demonstrated significant combat capability and claimed expertise in genetic manipulation. Those are valuable assets. The question is whether you're interested in productive partnership or if you insist on playing conqueror in a world that's already been conquered, just not through the methods you're accustomed to. You offer me a position in your corporate hierarchy," the Emperor said, voice flat. "You believe I would serve under your authority, trade my purpose for a salary and benefits package. I offer you resources," Edgar replied. "Laboratory space, access to our entire database of Compound V research, funding for whatever projects you deem worthy, and in exchange, you provide expertise that helps us perfect the process. Create stable superhuman assets without the psychological problems. Imagine it. A generation of enhanced humans with your discipline, your purpose, properly trained and deployed for humanity's actual benefit rather than shareholder profit." For a long moment, the Emperor was silent, considering. It was a clever pitch. Edgar had identified exactly what would appeal to someone of the Emperor's philosophy: the chance to correct the flaws in this universe's approach to human enhancement. To build something closer to the Space Marines, disciplined warrior servants rather than celebrity mascots. But there was a fundamental flaw in Edgar's offer. "You misunderstand the nature of our relationship," the Emperor said finally. "You believe yourself to be negotiating from a position of strength because you control resources, infrastructure, political influence. You believe that because I lack those things in this universe, I require your cooperation to achieve objectives." He took one step forward, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "But I am not a resource to be leveraged, human. I am not an asset to be acquired. I am the apex of human evolution, the culmination of thousands of generations of genetic refinement. And I do not serve those weaker than myself." Edgar's hand moved fractionally, muscle memory reaching for a panic button beneath his desk. The Emperor's psychic senses caught the motion before conscious thought completed it. "Don't," the Emperor said quietly, and Edgar froze. Not from psychic domination. The Emperor hadn't pushed that hard. Just from the sudden understanding that he'd miscalculated. "Your building contains 17 enhanced humans. Your servers hold data on hundreds more. Your bank accounts fund operations across the globe. And all of it exists only because I permit it to exist. I could reduce this tower to rubble in minutes. I could kill every enhanced human in your employ before they understood they were under attack. I could dismantle your empire between breakfast and lunch. And the only thing that would slow me is deciding which pieces to destroy first. Then why haven't you?" Edgar's voice remained steady despite the sweat beading his forehead. "If we're so beneath you, so corrupt, why are you here talking instead of conquering?" The Emperor turned toward the windows, looking out over the city. Millions of lives. Billions across the planet. Humanity, diminished and corrupted, yes, but still human. Still his responsibility, even in this fallen timeline. "Because I've seen what happens when power operates without understanding," he said quietly. "I've made that mistake before. Conquered worlds and thought conquest alone would bring compliance. It doesn't. Fear creates resentment. Force creates resistance. True unity requires not just power, but purpose that others can embrace." He looked back at Edgar. "So I will give you a choice. The same choice I've given 1,000 civilizations. Join me in rebuilding humanity toward its proper destiny, or step aside and let those with vision guide our species forward. And if I refuse both options, then you become irrelevant," the Emperor stated. "I don't need your resources, Edgar. I need your cooperation or your absence. Everything else is simply convenience." Before Edgar could respond, alarms shrieked through the building. The Emperor's psychic senses detected the surge immediately. Enhanced signatures moving rapidly upward, weapons charging, and something else. Something being activated in the sub-levels that read as both biological and technological. A weapons system. A failsafe. Edgar's expression remained neutral, but his eyes held grim satisfaction. "I told you I'd prepared. Did you really think I'd invite you here without contingencies?" The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "You've activated something in your lower levels, something you believe can contain or kill me. A weapon." "Insurance policy," Edgar corrected. "Built from our most successful experiment. Designed specifically to handle situations where even Homelander proves insufficient." He stood, straightening his tie. "You're right about one thing. Everything has value, including data on how you fight, your capabilities, your limitations. The last 23 minutes have been very educational." The building shuddered. Whatever was rising from below was large. The sublevels of Vought Tower housed more than server farms and parking garages. Buried beneath street level, shielded by concrete and steel and corporate secrecy, was Research Division 7. Projects too experimental, too dangerous, or too ethically compromised for public knowledge. And in the deepest chamber, designated Project Colossus, something that had been dormant for 3 years received activation protocols. The Emperor's psychic senses tracked its ascent through the building's infrastructure. Mass, approximately 9 tons. Power signature, intense, concentrated, suggesting multiple enhancement types layered onto a single frame. Biology, heavily modified, more cyborg than human. Tissue interwoven with synthetic materials his senses couldn't fully classify. Purpose, unmistakable. This was a weapon, pure and simple, built for overwhelming force. "You've created a monster," the Emperor observed, not looking away from the windows. Below, he could see crowds evacuating the surrounding blocks, police establishing wider perimeters. Someone had triggered evacuation protocols. Compound V layered onto cybernetic enhancement. Military-grade weaponry integrated into biological systems. You took a human and rebuilt them as a walking tank. Not a human, Edgar corrected, moving toward a reinforced door that had sealed automatically when the alarms triggered. An enemy combatant, captured overseas during an engagement we officially deny occurred. He volunteered for the program, understood the risks, and became something that makes Homelander look like a warm-up act. The CEO paused at the door, looking back. "You wanted to know what resources Vought commands? This is the answer. We don't just create heroes, we create solutions." The floor buckled, not from structural failure, but from something below exerting enough force to warp reinforced steel. The Emperor shifted his stance, weight distributing automatically into combat readiness, psychic shields manifesting as faint distortions in the air around him. The shimmer was barely visible, but Edgar caught it. More data, more information about capabilities. Then Project Colossus arrived. It came through the floor rather than the elevator, because elevators were designed for things that cared about infrastructure. The creature, because calling it human would be generous, was 3 meters of augmented flesh and integrated weaponry. Its right arm had been replaced entirely with a multi-barreled weapon system, its cables feeding from a power core embedded in its chest. The left arm retained human structure, but was plated in some dark alloy, fingers ending in retractable claws that gleamed with molecular edge sharpness. Its head was mostly enclosed in a helmet with a single red optic sensor, though patches of scarred tissue visible at the neck suggested the face beneath was beyond recognition. "Target acquired," it said. Voice processed through speakers that turned human speech into mechanical approximation. "Engagement authorized." The minigun spun up and fired. The Emperor moved as the first rounds left the barrels, psychic precognition giving him microseconds of warning. The depleted uranium rounds. He identified the composition through psychic resonance instantly. Tore through the space he'd occupied, shredding Edgar's desk, pulverizing the windows, turning the office into a storm of glass and splintered wood. The Emperor circled left, superhuman speed carrying him behind a support pillar as the Colossus tracked, weapon system following with hydraulic precision. "Fascinating," the Emperor said, voice carrying over the weapons fire. "You've overcome the primary limitation of Compound V enhancement, power without discipline, by replacing higher brain functions with tactical programming. A lobotomized weapon. How efficient." The Colossus charged. Despite its mass, it moved with shocking speed, closing the distance in 2 bounds that cracked the floor tiles. Its clawed hand swept in a wide arc designed to bisect targets at the torso. The Emperor ducked beneath it, striking the creature's knee joint with calculated force. His fist impacted reinforced bone sheathed in synthetic muscle, and something cracked, but not broken, just damaged. The Colossus barely stumbled. "Impressive durability," the Emperor acknowledged, dodging a backhand that would have decapitated baseline humans. Compound V's regeneration paired with cybernetic redundancy. Even catastrophic damage to biological systems won't immediately disable it. He caught the next strike, gauntleted hand gripping the clawed fingers, applying pressure that made metal groan. But there's a fundamental flaw in your design. The Colossus's chest-mounted weapon ports opened, revealing missile launchers. At point-blank range, it fired. The Emperor released its hand and raised his own, psychic energy manifesting as a kinetic barrier that caught the missiles mid-flight and held them suspended, engines screaming against invisible resistance. For 3 seconds, warheads designed to penetrate tank armor strained against will given physical form. Then the Emperor redirected them. The missiles corkscrewed away, tracking systems scrambled by psychic interference, detonating against the far wall in a cascade of fire and shrapnel. The Colossus weathered the explosions, its own weaponry after all, and it had been built to survive friendly fire. But the Emperor had already moved, using the blast as cover to close distance. He struck the power core in its chest with an open palm, and psychic energy discharged directly into the containment systems. Not enough to detonate it, that would level several floors, but enough to disrupt the energy flow feeding its weapon systems. The minigun whined and died. The missile ports sealed but wouldn't reopen. For 5 seconds, the Colossus was reduced to purely physical combat. It adapted instantly, mechanical mind processing the change, reorienting tactics. If long-range weapons were compromised, then close combat would suffice. It was still 9 tons of enhanced muscle and reinforced skeleton, and everything it had been built for funneled into a single objective: eliminate the target. They traded blows that rang like gong strikes, each impact generating shockwaves that shattered remaining windows and cracked support columns. The Emperor's technique was refined, economical. 10 millennia of combat experience distilled into movements that wasted no energy. The Colossus's style was programmed efficiency, analyzing strike patterns, adjusting defenses, learning mid-combat like a machine optimizing algorithms. But the Emperor had fought things far more dangerous than cybernetically enhanced humans. He'd dueled orc war bosses whose strength could shatter battle tanks. He'd matched blades with Eldar autarchs whose speed made them nearly invisible. He'd stood against greater demons whose very existence violated physical laws. A lobotomized weapon, however well designed, was ultimately just another obstacle. He feinted left, drew the Colossus into overcommitting to a block, then struck its helmet with a palm strike channeled through psychic enhancement. The optic sensor shattered. The helmet crumpled, and the biological brain still functioning beneath it, reduced though it was, received a psychic spike directly into its pain centers. The Colossus staggered. The Emperor pressed his advantage, targeting joints, stress points, anywhere that cybernetic and biological systems interfaced. Not trying to destroy it, that would take sustained effort and time he didn't want to waste. But disabling it, showing Edgar exactly how temporary this solution was. "Your weapon is impressive," the Emperor said, dodging another wild swing as the Colossus fought through sensory disruption. "But it has a fatal weakness. It's designed to fight enemies who operate within this universe's limitations. I am not one of those enemies." He gripped the Colossus's weapon arm, braced his feet, and twisted. Metal shrieked. Synthetic muscle tore. The entire limb separated at the shoulder joint, cables sparking as they severed. The Colossus stumbled backward, ichor and hydraulic fluid leaking from the wound, regeneration already beginning, but too slow to matter in combat time. The Emperor tossed the severed arm aside and advanced. The Colossus swung with its remaining limb, powerful but increasingly desperate as its tactical programming recognized the fight was lost. The Emperor caught the fist mid-strike, then drove his other hand into the creature's chest core, not to destroy it, but to deactivate it. Psychic energy surged into the control systems, scrambling processors, forcing emergency shutdown protocols. The Colossus froze, locked in place, its remaining optics flickering to darkness. Not dead, the biological components still lived, regeneration working to repair damage. But offline, disabled. A 9-ton paperweight until someone reactivated its systems. The Emperor released it and turned to face Edgar, who'd watched the entire engagement from behind the reinforced door. The CEO's expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes betrayed his calculation, assessing what he'd seen, updating probability matrices, determining next moves. "Your insurance policy has failed," the Emperor stated, "as will any other weapons you deploy. I've faced armies, Edgar, legions, forces that would reduce your enhanced humans to component atoms. You cannot defeat me through force. Accept this, and we can discuss actual solutions to your civilization's problems. Or continue escalating and watch me dismantle everything you've built piece by piece." Edgar was silent for a long moment, staring at the disabled Colossus, at the devastation of his office, at the being standing calmly amid the wreckage. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone making a decision that would reshape everything. "You're right," he said quietly. "I can't defeat you through force. But you're wrong about one thing. I don't need to defeat you. I just needed to demonstrate to certain parties that you can be fought, that you're not invincible, that resistance, while costly, is possible." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The cameras, the satellites, the surveillance network recording this entire engagement." Edgar gestured to the empty air, where invisible sensors had captured everything. "Every government, every military, every intelligence agency on this planet is watching right now, seeing you fight, analyzing your methods, identifying patterns. You beat Homelander, beat the Seven, beat Project Colossus. But each time, you revealed more about your capabilities, how you move, how you think, what tactics you favor." He smiled slightly. "You said I built my power through control and information. You're right. And right now, I've just distributed information about you to every power structure on Earth. You're no longer an unknown variable. You're a studied threat. And humans are very good at killing things once we understand how they work." The Emperor regarded him with something that might have been respect. "Clever. Sacrifice your assets to weaponize intelligence gathering. Turn my demonstrations of power into data for others to exploit." He moved closer to the door, and Edgar tensed despite himself. "But you've made a critical miscalculation." "Which is?" "You assume the powers observing this engagement are your allies," the Emperor said. "That they'll use this information to contain me rather than to overthrow you. Every government official, every military commander watching me dismantle your solutions. They're also seeing proof that Vaught's monopoly on enhanced humans can be broken. That there are powers beyond Compound 5, beyond your control." Edgar's expression flickered, just for a moment, a crack in the corporate mask. "You've been so focused on studying me," the Emperor continued, "that you haven't considered what message this sends about you. That the great Stan Edgar, builder of empires, required a walking tank and full surveillance mobilization just to survive a conversation. That your flagship hero bleeds, your ultimate weapon falls, and your control is far more fragile than anyone suspected." He turned toward the destroyed windows, toward the city beyond. "No, thank you for the demonstration, Edgar. You've shown me exactly where the civilization's true power lies, not in its enhanced humans, but in its information networks. When I rebuild this world's power structures, I'll know which systems to preserve and which to burn. The Emperor stepped through the shattered window frame and dropped 99 stories of freefall that ended with him landing in the plaza below, cratering the pavement, but otherwise unharmed. He rose, brushed dust from his armor, and began walking north, leaving Vought Tower damaged but standing, Edgar alive but shaken, and the world watching with new understanding. In the safe house, the boys sat in stunned silence. Huey breathed. He just beat Vought's secret weapon, on camera, for everyone to see. And now every government on Earth knows exactly what Vought's been hiding, added. How many illegal enhanced human projects, how much power they've been hoarding. Butcher's grin was feral. The Emperor just did something we've been trying to do for years. He broke Vought's mystique, showed them as vulnerable, exposed their secrets to the whole fucking world. He stood, grabbing his coat, which means it's time to have a chat with our new golden friend, before someone else recruits him for their own crusade. Billy, Huey protested. He's heading away from Vought. Where's he even going? Butcher checked his weapons, eyes gleaming with dangerous excitement. If I were an all-powerful ancient warrior king who just discovered this world's power flows through information, I'd be heading to the one place where people might actually have answers about what the fuck is really going on. He looked at his team. We're going to find him before the CIA, the military, or some other alphabet agency gets their hooks in. Because right now we've got a narrow window where he doesn't have allies, doesn't have infrastructure, and might actually listen to people offering real information instead of corporate bullshit. And if he doesn't want to talk? Frenchie asked. Then we die quick, mon ami, Butcher said cheerfully. But at least we'll die trying to kill the right monsters. The Emperor walked north through Manhattan, a golden titan moving with the unhurried stride of a being who had witnessed entire civilizations rise and fall. He ignored the sirens, the distant helicopters, the cordons of police and National Guard that appeared and dissolved as conflicting orders created bureaucratic chaos. His destination wasn't a place, but a person. His psychic senses had detected one enhanced human in this city, whose mind wasn't layered with corporate conditioning or psychotic narcissism. Someone with discipline, with moral conflict, with genuine questions about their own purpose. He found Queen Maeve at a rooftop bar 4 blocks from Vought Tower, drinking alone. She'd changed out of her costume into civilian clothes, jeans, leather jacket, dark sunglasses despite the hour, and sat at the edge of the building, staring out at the skyline where smoke still rose from their earlier confrontation. She didn't turn as the Emperor landed beside her, his armored boots touching down silently despite the height. "You're not subtle," she said, not looking at him, taking another sip of whiskey. "Subtlety is for those who fear discovery," the Emperor replied, folding his arms. "You left your team, your employment, had a disagreement with management about proper workplace conduct," she said dryly. "They wanted me to spin what happened as a misunderstanding. Explain to the public how you were some new villain we were heroically containing. How Homelander's injuries were sustained saving civilians. How everything's under control." She finally looked at him, removing her sunglasses. Her eyes were tired. "I said no. So they gave me the day off, which is Vought speak for get your story straight or get disappeared. You chose not to perpetuate the fiction," the Emperor observed. "Why?" "Because I've spent 20 years lying," Maeve said, turning back to the view. "Lying about what we are, what we do, what happens when someone with power decides not to play hero anymore. And today, I watched the most powerful being in this world bleed. I watched the system that's controlled everything since I was a kid get exposed on live television. And for the first time in a long time, I saw an alternative to either playing along or getting quietly eliminated. She finished her drink. So, what do you want? Because if you're here to recruit me for your own crusade, save the speech. I've heard them all. Not recruitment, the Emperor said. Information. And your employer, Stan Edgar, revealed his motivations easily enough. Profit, control, the perpetuation of his power structure. The one called Homelander operates on simpler principles. Narcissism, adoration, dominance. But you're different. You serve despite recognizing the corruption. You follow orders despite knowing they're wrong. Why? Maeve was silent for a long time, studying the amber liquid in her glass. When I was 14, she said finally, I got my powers. Compound 5 overdose. My parents were test subjects. I was the side effect. Vought found me, trained me, told me I could be a hero. Save people. Make a difference. She gestured vaguely toward the city. For a while, I believed them. Fought the good fight. Protected the innocent. Then I got older. Saw how the sausage was made. Learned that for every person we saved on camera, 3 more died off screen because it wasn't good PR. That the villains we fought were mostly other Supes who wouldn't play ball with Vought's contracts. That the entire superhero industry exists to sell merchandise and military contracts, not to actually help anyone. She poured another drink. So I tried to quit, once. They showed me what happens to Supes who try to quit. Had a friend, Stormfront, not the Nazi, the original. She decided she wanted out. 2 days later, she was dead. Accident during training. Everyone knew what really happened, so I made a deal. I'd stay, play the part, wear the costume, and smile for the cameras. In exchange, they'd leave certain people alone. Let me have some autonomy. Not much, but enough to actually help someone now and then, without it being part of a marketing campaign. A compromise, the Emperor said. You surrendered your freedom to protect others. I surrendered my integrity to survive, Maeve corrected bitterly. And every day I wonder if it was worth it. If the people I've helped are worth the lies I've told, the damage I've let happen, the monster I've enabled by pretending Homelander's just another colleague instead of a walking atrocity waiting to happen. The Emperor considered this. He'd seen this pattern before, in the Unification Wars. Warriors who knew their cause was corrupt, but fought anyway, because they believed they could mitigate the worst excesses from within. The logic was seductive. The reality was that it never worked. Systems corrupted idealists far more often than idealists reformed systems. Your loyalty is to an abstraction, he said. Not to Vought, not to your team, but to some concept of helping people that you've convinced yourself you can preserve within the corruption. It's a flawed strategy. Compromise with evil doesn't temper it, it legitimizes it. Easy for you to say, Maeve shot back. You show up with godlike power, beat everyone who challenges you, and announce you're going to rebuild civilization according to your rules. You haven't had to make choices. You haven't had to look at someone and decide whether saving them is worth enabling something worse. You haven't lived in the real world. The Emperor's gaze hardened. I have lived for 10,000 years, warrior. I have made choices that doomed entire worlds to spare others. I have sacrificed millions to save billions. I have committed atrocities that would haunt your nightmares forever, all in service of a singular purpose: humanity's survival. Do not presume to lecture me about difficult choices. Then what's your point? Maeve demanded. Why find me? Why talk instead of conquer? Because you represent something this civilization has lost, the Emperor said. The capacity for moral reasoning despite power. Homelander sees strength as license. Your corporate masters see power as commodity. But you understand that power is responsibility. Even if you fail to live up to that understanding, the recognition itself is rare. He stepped closer, his presence making the air hum with psychic energy. I am offering you a different choice. Not compromise, not surrender, but actual purpose. A chance to use your strength for something beyond marketing campaigns and damage control. Maeve stood facing him. And what's that purpose? Serving you? Building your new empire? Serving humanity, the Emperor corrected. This world is fractured. Its power structures are built on lies and exploitation. Its greatest assets, enhanced humans like yourself, are either corrupted into narcissists or leashed into compliance. I intend to change that. To unite this planet under a single vision that actually serves human advancement rather than corporate profit. And I need warriors who understand the difference between being a weapon and being a guardian. I've heard this speech before, Maeve said quietly. From Edgar, from Homelander, from every would-be savior who thinks they know what's best for everyone else. If the road to hell is paved with good intentions and golden armor. The Emperor nodded, acknowledging the point. Then don't serve me. Serve your own conscience. But ask yourself this, if not now, when? If not against this corruption, then what? You've spent 20 years compromising. How much longer before there's nothing left of the warrior you were to compromise with? Before Maeve could answer, the rooftop door slammed open. Butcher stepped out, followed by Huey, MM, and Frenchie. All were armed, not with conventional weapons, but with devices that hummed with energy signatures the Emperor recognized as crude but effective power suppressors. Tech designed to counter Compound V. Sorry to interrupt the recruitment pitch, Butcher said, lighting a cigarette. But we need to have a chat, mate, before you start building your brave new world. The Emperor turned, regarding them with mild curiosity. Baseline humans. No enhancements. But their body language spoke of experience, of surviving against superior forces through cunning and ruthlessness. The leader's mind, Butcher, radiated focused hatred and cold calculation. The younger one, Huey, carried moral conflict similar to Maeve's. The others were professionals, pragmatic and deadly. You're the ones who fight Vought from the shadows, the Emperor stated. The vigilantes. You believe my presence creates opportunity for your cause. Smart fella, Butcher said, exhaling smoke. See, here's the thing. We've been trying to expose Vought for years. Show the world what they really are. Take down Homelander and the rest of these corrupt cunts. And in one afternoon, you've done more damage to their reputation than we managed in a decade. So, from a certain perspective, we should be thanking you. But, Huey added nervously, we've also seen what happens when someone with too much power decides they know what's best for everyone. And right now, you're looking an awful lot like a new Homelander with better armor. The Emperor's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. You fear I'll replace one tyrant with another. We fear you'll kill a lot of innocent people trying to build your utopia, MM said, his voice steady. We've seen what greater good looks like in this world. It looks like dead kids in apartment buildings when a soup fight goes wrong. Well, it looks like neighborhoods flattened because two gods decided to have a pissing contest in the middle of a city. Valid concerns, the Emperor acknowledged. But misplaced. I do not fight in population centers unless forced. I do not endanger civilians as collateral damage. And I do not believe in utopias, only in better organizational structures that minimize suffering while maximizing human potential. See, that's the thing about fascists, Butcher said cheerfully. They always have a reason why their particular flavor of dictatorship is necessary. Why this time, with them in charge, it'll be different. The Emperor's psychic senses extended, reading the group's intentions. Butcher genuinely believed he was the lesser evil, that eliminating Vought was worth potentially creating something worse. Huey was terrified but determined, and the others followed Butcher's lead but maintained their own moral lines. You plan to either recruit me or eliminate me, the Emperor said. Your weapons are designed to disrupt enhanced physiology. You believe they might work against me because you've classified me as another Supes. Got it in one, Butcher said. So here's the offer. You help us take down Vought, really take them down, expose everything, dismantle the corporation, put Homelander in the ground. And then you leave. Go back to wherever you came from. Let humanity sort itself out without gods or kings or golden emperors. And if I refuse? Butcher's smile vanished. Then we try our luck with these. He raised one of the suppressors. They're experimental, might not work, might make you sneeze. But we've seen them drop Supes stronger than you look. The Emperor considered them, these baseline humans standing against powers they couldn't possibly match, armed with nothing but conviction and jury-rigged technology. He'd seen this before too. On 1,000 worlds, humans fighting against impossible odds because they believed in something. Sometimes they were heroes. Sometimes they were fools. Usually they were both. I admire your courage, the Emperor said finally. But you misunderstand the situation. This isn't a negotiation between equals. It's a decision about which allies are worth cultivating. He looked at Maeve. You have until dawn to decide whether you'll stand with these rebels, with Vought, or with a vision of humanity that transcends both. Choose wisely. He turned toward the edge of the roof. Butcher raised the suppressor. I wouldn't. The Emperor vanished. Not teleportation, psychic-enhanced speed moving him faster than human perception could track. One moment he was there, the next he was gone, leaving only the echo of his words and 4 bewildered vigilantes staring at empty space. Maeve sighed, finishing her whiskey. He's not like the others, she said quietly. Not like Homelander. Not like any Supes I've ever met. Yeah, we noticed, Butcher said, lowering the weapon. Fuck. He offered you a choice, Huey said to Maeve. What are you going to do? Maeve looked at the city, at Vought Tower still standing in the distance, at the smoke from today's battles, at the 4 humans who'd somehow survived fighting gods and corporations. I don't know, she admitted. But for the first time in 20 years, I actually have one. She stood, leaving her glass on the ledge. If you're going after him, be careful. He's playing a different game than anyone else in this city. And I don't think he considers any of us pawns. I think he considers us test subjects to see what humanity in this timeline is actually capable of. She walked past them to the door, pausing only to look back. And Butcher? If you do try those suppressors on him, don't miss, because I don't think he gives second chances. She left. The boys stood in silence as night fell over the city, the implications settling over them like ash. Well, Frenchie said finally, this complicates things. Butcher watched the city lights come on, one by one. No, he said quietly. It simplifies them. We've got 3 enemies now. Vought, Homelander, and a golden god who thinks he's humanity's savior. And they all want to kill each other. He crushed his cigarette under his boot. "So we're going to help them. Let the monsters fight. And when there's only one left standing, that's when we show him what happens when you underestimate the little guys." The Emperor did not sleep. He had not needed to for millennia, his perpetual biology and psychic mastery sustaining him through will alone. Instead, he stood atop the ruins of an abandoned industrial complex in Brooklyn, watching the city's nocturnal rhythms. His psychic senses were fully operational now, finely tuned to this universe's unique frequencies. He could feel the currents of fear, ambition, and greed flowing through the metropolis like corrupted blood through dying arteries. His encounter with the boys had been illuminating. Baseline humans, armed with nothing but desperation and primitive technology, daring to confront him. It spoke to a resilience that had survived even Vaught's systemic corruption. That resilience was worth preserving. It was the seed from which a proper human civilization could be regrown. A presence approached from the east, moving with superhuman grace, landing silently on the rusted catwalk 20 meters away. Queen Maeve, out of costume, wearing practical combat gear. She carried no visible weapons, but her posture was that of a warrior reporting for duty, not a supplicant seeking favor. "You came," the Emperor stated, not turning. "You gave me a choice," Maeve replied. "I'm making it, but I have conditions." "Conditions imply negotiation. I am not negotiating." "Then you're not listening," Maeve said, her voice steady. "I've spent my life being used. By Vought, by the media, by my own need to believe I was doing good. I won't trade one master for another. So if you want my help, you accept my terms. Otherwise, I walk away, and you can find another disillusioned Supes to recruit." The Emperor finally turned, his golden eyes regarding her with genuine interest. "State your terms." "First, no unnecessary casualties. You want to tear down Vought? Fine. But you don't get to burn down the city to do it. The people in those buildings aren't your enemies. They're hostages." "Agreed. Precision is preferable to annihilation." "Second, Homelander dies. Not captured, not contained. Killed. He's too unstable, too powerful, and too far gone. Leaving him alive is a death sentence for thousands, probably millions." "Also agreeable. He is a flawed creation, a danger to the species he claims to represent." "Third," Maeve took a steadying breath, "when this is over, the Supes, the ones who survive, the ones who aren't monsters, get a choice. To serve your new order or to walk away. No retribution, no forced service. Also a real choice." The Emperor was silent for a long moment. "You ask for leniency for beings who have, by your own admission, participated in systemic corruption. I ask for justice, not vengeance," Maeve countered. "Most of us were kids when Vought got their hooks in us. We were molded, marketed, and manipulated. Some embraced it. Some became monsters. But some of us, we just tried to survive. To do a little good where we could. They deserve a chance to be something else." The Emperor considered. In the Great Crusade, he had offered such terms to compliant human civilizations. Those who surrendered and accepted imperial rule were integrated, their people spared. Only those who resisted were destroyed. This was not dissimilar. "Your terms are acceptable," he said, with one amendment. "Those who walk away do so without their compound V enhancements. I will provide a genetic therapy to reverse the alterations. They may live as baseline humans, free of Vaught's legacy." Maeve blinked, surprised. "You can do that?" "I have forgotten more about genetic manipulation than your Vought scientists will ever learn," the Emperor said. "Compound V is a crude stimulant, triggering latent mutations. Reversing its effects is complex, but within my capabilities. For the first time, Maeve saw something beyond the golden armor and terrifying power. A solution, a way out that didn't end in a coffin or a cell. "Okay," she said, her voice softer. "Then I'm in. What's the plan?" Vought's power is threefold: its public image, its political influence, and its monopoly on enhanced humans, the Emperor began. He started pacing slowly along the catwalk. "Today, I damaged the first. The world saw their strongest fail, their secrets exposed. The next phase is to shatter the second, to turn their political allies against them." "How?" Edgar has half of Congress in his pocket. The Pentagon's dripping with Vought contracts. "By presenting them with a more attractive alternative," the Emperor said. "Governments do not serve corporations out of loyalty. They serve them out of perceived necessity. Vought provides enhanced assets for national security. I will provide something better, the means to create their own." He extended a hand, psychic energy coalescing into a complex holographic schematic between them. It showed a double helix, but unlike any DNA model Maeve had seen. It shimmered with golden light, strands of data orbiting it like planets. "This is a genetic template," the Emperor explained. "A stable, controllable enhancement protocol. No random mutations, no psychological degradation. It creates warriors, soldiers, with predictable power sets, unwavering loyalty to humanity, and discipline that makes your 7 look like children throwing tantrums." "Space Marines," Maeve whispered, remembering his earlier speeches. "You want to build them here?" "A simplified version, adapted to this universe's biological constraints," he confirmed. "I will offer this technology to the United States government in exchange for dissolving Vought and transferring its assets to a new organization under my oversight." Maeve stared at the shimmering helix. It was beautiful and utterly terrifying. "You're not just planning to destroy Vought. You're planning to replace it, to make the government dependent on you instead." "Dependency is a chain," the Emperor acknowledged. "But all civilizations require structure. The choice is between chains that drag humanity down and foundations that lift it up. I offer the latter." "And what happens when the government says no? When they try to take this by force?" The Emperor's gaze hardened. "Then they will learn why I conquered a galaxy." Before Maeve could respond, his head snapped up, psychic senses alert. "We have company, multiple enhanced signatures, not Vought, different patterns." From the shadows below, figures emerged, not in flashy costumes, but in tactical gear, military grade. 7 of them moving with coordinated precision. At their head stood a woman Maeve recognized with a jolt of dread. Grace Mallory, former deputy director of the CIA, but now a ghost in the intelligence community. And beside her, a man in a crisp army dress uniform covered in medals. General Samuel Kessler, head of the Pentagon's Special Threat Integration Program. "Well," Mallory said, her voice echoing in the vast space. "This is an interesting place for a strategy meeting." The Emperor descended from the catwalk, landing without a sound before the newcomers. His psychic scan confirmed they were baseline humans, but surrounded by a faint energy haze. Personal shielding technology, advanced and non-Vought in origin. "You've been observing," the Emperor stated. "Since you tore a hole in reality over Times Square," General Kessler said, his voice a gravelly baritone. "Every satellite, every drone, every listening post we have has been focused on you. We watched you beat Homelander, and we watched you dismantle Edgar's pet monster, and we've been listening to your conversation for the last 4 minutes." Maeve moved to stand beside the Emperor, facing her former superiors. "Grace, General, this is..." "We know who he is," Mallory interrupted, her eyes never leaving the Emperor. "Or rather, we know what he claims to be. The question is what he actually wants, and whether we can work with him." This was a new variable. The Emperor studied them. Mallory's mind was a fortress of classified knowledge and cold pragmatism. Kessler's was simpler, a soldier's mindset, evaluating threats and assets. They represented the actual power behind America's military-industrial complex, the people Vought had bribed and manipulated, but who ultimately controlled the weapons that could glass cities. "Sure, you represent the United States government," the Emperor said. "We represent the parts of it that haven't been bought by Stan Edgar," Kessler corrected. Vaught's monopoly on enhanced humans has been a national security nightmare for a decade. They're unreliable, unstable, and ultimately loyal to a corporate bottom line, not to the Constitution. We've been looking for a way to break that monopoly since Homelander laser-eyed a senator who asked too many questions. And you believe I am that way. "We believe your unprecedented opportunity," Mallory said. "You have power Vought can't match, knowledge they can't replicate, and according to our psychologists, a worldview that aligns, in broad strokes, with certain strategic objectives." She gestured to the glowing genetic template still hovering in the air. "That, for example, and if it's real, it changes everything." "It is real," the Emperor said. "I will demonstrate." He extended a hand toward one of the soldiers flanking Mallory, a young woman with a stoic expression. Before anyone could react, a thread of golden light leaped from the Emperor's fingertip to the soldier's forehead. She stiffened, but didn't cry out. Data flowed. Genetic sequences, activation protocols, biochemical pathways. After 3 seconds, the light vanished. The soldier blinked, then flexed her hands. They shimmered, the air around them distorting as localized telekinetic fields manifested. "What did you do?" Kessler demanded, hand moving toward his sidearm. "I activated latent genetic potential," the Emperor explained. "Every human carries the seeds of psychic ability. In most timelines, it remains dormant. In this one, Compound V crudely stimulates physical mutations, but leaves the psychic genome untouched. I have unlocked it. She now possesses low-level telekinetic and telepathic abilities. They will strengthen with training." The soldier looked at her hands, then at Mallory, wonder and fear warring on her face. "I can feel your thoughts, ma'am. Not clearly, just impressions, like hearing a conversation through a wall." Mallory's professional mask slipped for just an instant, revealing naked ambition. "No Compound V, no injections. Just awakening." "Precisely," the Emperor said. "This is what Vought has been selling you a corrupted version of. This is what humanity is meant to be. Not celebrities in capes, but guardians with purpose." Kessler exchanged a look with Mallory. A silent conversation passed between them, years of partnership conveying more than words could. Finally, Kessler nodded. "What are your terms?" Mallory asked. "The dissolution of Vought International. All assets seized by the government. All enhanced humans currently under contract to be evaluated. Those who are salvageable will be retrained. Those who are not will be neutralized. In exchange, I will provide the complete genetic awakening protocol and oversee the creation of a new defense force, answerable to civilian authority." "And your place in this?" Kessler asked. "You don't strike me as the answerable to civilian authority type." "I will serve as advisor and overseer," the Emperor said. "My goal is humanity's advancement, not personal power. Once this world is on the proper path, I will depart. My work here will be done." Another silent exchange. Maeve watched, her heart pounding. This was happening too fast. Governments making deals with beings they didn't understand. But the alternative was Vought, was Homelander. "We have a condition of our own," Mallory said. "A test, proof that you're not just another would-be tyrant." "Name it." "Homelander," Kessler said. "He's holed up in Vought Tower with the remaining 7. He's gone completely off the reservation, killed 3 Vought executives who tried to reason with him. He's broadcasting threats, demanding you face him one-on-one. He says he'll start leveling city blocks if you don't show by dawn." The Emperor's expression didn't change. "And you want me to kill him?" "We want you to stop him," Mallory corrected. "Permanently? Do that without leveling Manhattan in the process, and you'll have proven you're more than just talk. And you'll have saved millions of lives. And we'll have the political capital to do what needs to be done with Vought." The Emperor looked at Maeve. She gave a slight, grim nod. Homelander had to go. There was no other way. "Very well," the Emperor said. "At dawn I will end this. But understand, when I face Homelander, I will not be gentle. I will not be theatrical. I will eliminate him as the threat he is. The world will see what happens when a genuine warrior confronts a spoiled child with too much power." Mallory extended a hand. "Then we have an agreement." The Emperor looked at her hand, then back to her face. "I do not shake hands, Director. My word is binding. Prepare your forces. When Homelander falls, Vought's house of cards will collapse. Be ready to catch the pieces." He turned, his armor gleaming in the dim light. "Maeve, with me, we have a dawn appointment to keep." As they walked away, leaving the government agents in the crumbling complex, Maeve finally voiced the fear that had been growing since the meeting began. "They're using you," she said quietly. "Just like they used Vought. Just like they'd use anyone with power." "I know," the Emperor said, his voice calm. "And I am using them. This is how civilizations change, warrior. Not through pure ideals, but through aligned interests. For now, our interests align. That is enough." He looked toward the distant spire of Vought Tower, where a mad god waited for sunrise. "Tonight, we prepare. Tomorrow, we end an era." Dawn over Manhattan arrived not with gentle light, but with the grim, colorless hue of pending violence. The city held its breath. Overnight, the National Guard had established an evacuation perimeter 20 blocks deep around Vought Tower. News networks broadcast empty air, their journalists pulled back to safety after Homelander's final, deranged ultimatum. "Bring me the Golden Freak, or I paint the East River red with this city's blood." At the center of the evacuated zone, standing in the middle of a deserted Fifth Avenue, the Emperor waited. He had dismissed Maeve and Mallory's offers of support. This was not a battle for armies or tactics. It was a duel of fundamental principles. Order against chaos. Discipline against impulse. A king against a pretender. His armor, polished to a mirror finish, caught the first true rays of sunlight. His psychic senses were expanded to their fullest, mapping the tower, feeling the 23 enhanced humans still inside. Most were terrified, huddled in panic rooms or service floors. But at the very top, in the penthouse that had once been Stan Edgar's sanctum, a sun of malignant pride burned with furious intensity. Homelander wasn't hiding. He was waiting on the helipad, 1,000 feet above the street, visible to every camera still trained on the building. He'd changed into a fresh costume, the American flag motif somehow more garish under the dawn light. He held a champagne flute in one hand, sipping calmly, as if awaiting a guest for brunch. The Emperor took a single step forward. Then he rose into the air. Not flight as Homelander understood it. No dramatic leap, no visible propulsion. The Emperor simply ascended, gravity becoming a suggestion he chose to ignore. It was a subtle display of psychokinesis, a total mastery of physical forces that made Homelander's tactile telekinesis look like a child's trick. He rose in a straight vertical line, calm and inexorable, until he hovered level with the helipad, 30 feet from where Homelander stood. "You came," Homelander said, tossing the empty flute over the edge. It fell, tinkling, to shatter on the plaza far below. "I wasn't sure you would. Figured you might have gotten scared after our little warm-up yesterday." "Fear is a physiological response to perceived threat," the Emperor replied, landing softly on the helipad. "You do not qualify." Homelander's smile tightened. Still with the philosophical bullshit. "You know, I looked you up, or tried to. No records. No history. Nothing. It's like you popped into existence yesterday. Which means you're not some ancient king. You're a fraud. A really powerful fraud. But still just a Supa who doesn't know his place." "My place," the Emperor said, beginning to slowly circle, "is at the head of humanity, guiding it toward its destiny. Your place is in the ground as a cautionary tale about power without wisdom." Homelander's eyes began to glow, a deep, dangerous red. "See? That's where you're wrong. My place is right here. On top. Always has been. Always will be. You're just the latest idiot who thought they could take what's mine." He fired. Twin beams of concentrated heat, hotter than the core of a star, lanced across the short distance. This time, the Emperor didn't deflect or redirect. He absorbed. A sphere of golden psychic energy manifested around the point of impact, swallowing the beams, containing their fury. The Emperor stood within it, unmoved, as the energy dissipated harmlessly into his own reserves. It was a display of such utter dominance that Homelander actually hesitated, his laser vision sputtering out. "Your power is borrowed," the Emperor stated, the psychic sphere collapsing. "A chemical stimulant triggering mutations you neither understand nor control. My power is earned, forged through 10,000 years of study, discipline, and sacrifice. You are a child playing with a plasma grenade. I am the architect of stars." With a roar of pure fury, Homelander shot forward, a supersonic blur aimed at tackling the Emperor off the building. The Emperor met the charge head-on, not with matching speed, but with perfect timing. He pivoted at the last possible microsecond, grabbing Homelander's extended arm, using the Supes' own momentum to hurl him in a devastating arc. Homelander crashed through the helipad's steel railing, tumbling out into open air before catching himself, hovering, bleeding from a dozen cuts where shattered metal had actually pierced his skin. "Impossible!" he screamed, the sound echoing off skyscrapers. His eyes glowed again, not with laser vision, but with something else. A building pressure, a vibration in the air. "You can't hurt me. No one can hurt me." He clapped his hands together. The resulting shockwave was a physical thing, a concentric ring of concussive force that shattered every remaining window on the tower's upper floors. It struck the Emperor like a tidal wave, but he rode it, like psychic anchors holding him firm to the building's structure even as the helipad beneath him buckled and tore. Homelander followed the shockwave, streaking in, fists swinging with the force of meteor impacts. The Emperor blocked, parried, countered. Each blow they exchanged sent thunderclaps across the silent city. Each impact cratered steel and concrete. They were fighting on a surface never designed for such forces, and it was disintegrating around them. The Emperor took a hit, a solid right hook to the jaw that would have atomized a tank. His head snapped to the side, but he didn't stumble. He turned back, golden eyes blazing. "Is that all?" he asked. Enraged beyond reason, Homelander unleashed everything. Heat vision at maximum dispersion, trying to engulf the Emperor in a sun-hot furnace. Sonic screams that tore the very air apart. Punches that came faster than sound, a barrage meant to overwhelm through sheer volume of violence. The Emperor weathered the storm. His psychic shields shimmered into visibility, a golden lattice of impossible geometry that absorbed, diffused, or redirected every attack. He wasn't just defending, he was analyzing. Homelander was strong, fast, and phenomenally durable. But he fought with emotion, with rage, pride, fear. Every attack was telegraphed by his psychological state. To the Emperor's millennia-honed perceptions, it was like fighting a screaming manifesto of weakness. After 30 seconds of furious, one-sided assault, Homelander paused, chest heaving, his costume smoldering from his own heat. The Emperor stood untouched, not even breathing heavily. "You're not even trying," Homelander panted, disbelief warring with his fury. "Trying implies uncertainty," the Emperor said. "I am certain. This ends now." He moved. It was the first time he'd taken the offensive. Before he had reacted, countered, defended. Now he attacked. And the difference was catastrophic. His speed wasn't supersonic. It was something else. Something that seemed to ignore the intervening space. One moment he was across the ruined helipad. The next, he was directly in front of Homelander, his armored fist buried in the Supes' stomach. The impact didn't send Homelander flying. It drove the air from his lungs in a shocked gasp. It was a perfectly focused strike. Kinetic energy delivered not as a blunt force, but as a targeted shockwave that bypassed his invulnerable skin to vibrate his internal organs. Homelander doubled over. The Emperor's other hand came up, fingers splayed, and psychic force, raw, undiluted will, slammed the Supes down onto the buckling deck, pinning him. "You think your strength makes you special," the Emperor said, standing over him, his voice carrying a weight that went beyond sound. "But strength without control is a liability. You are a danger to every human on this planet simply by existing." Homelander struggled, screaming, heat vision scorching the steel beneath him. He tried to rise, but the psychic pressure holding him down was like the weight of a mountain. For the first time in his life, he was truly, utterly helpless. "You can't kill me," he snarled, spit and blood flecking his lips. "Nothing can kill me." "A common delusion among those who have never faced true power," the Emperor replied. He knelt, placing one gauntleted hand on Homelander's chest directly over his heart. "Your invulnerability is cellular regeneration fueled by Compound V, a clever trick. But like all chemical processes, it has a critical threshold." Golden light began to seep from the Emperor's hand, not heat, but something subtler, more invasive. It was psychic energy tuned to a specific frequency, the resonant frequency of Homelander-enhanced cellular structure. What are you doing?" Homelander gasped, feeling a strange vibration building inside him, a wrongness in his very bones. "I am introducing a dissonance," the Emperor explained, his voice calm, clinical. "Your cells regenerate by drawing on the compound FIF in your system. I am simply changing the tune, making the music they dance to incompatible with life." The light intensified. Homelander began to scream, not in pain, but in profound, existential terror. He could feel it. His body, the thing that had never failed him, was turning against itself. His legendary healing factor was now accelerating, but chaotically, without direction. Cells divided at cancerous rates. Tissues mutated and warped. His own power was eating him alive from the inside. "Stop," he begged, the god reduced to a terrified child. "Please." The Emperor's expression showed no pity. "You had decades to learn mercy. To learn restraint, you learned only cruelty. This is not vengeance. It is pest control." With a final surge of will, the Emperor twisted the psychic frequency. Homelander's body arched off the deck, a silent scream locked in his throat. His skin, once impervious, began to gray, to crack like dried clay. From the fissures, not blood, but a fine, sparkling dust emerged. The compound V violently purged and neutralized. The process took 7 seconds. When the Emperor stood, Homelander was gone. In his place was a brittle, ashen statue, frozen in a final rictus of agony. A gentle breeze from the Hudson River stirred across the helipad, and the statue crumbled, dissolving into a mound of inert gray powder that scattered across the stained concrete. The strongest Supe in the world had been reduced to dust and memory. The Emperor looked down at the remains, then out at the city. In the distance, he could see the shapes of military helicopters approaching, could feel the psychic relief and terror washing from the minds of the millions watching. The deed was done. He turned as the door to the penthouse roof access burst open. Queen Maeve stood there, flanked by Mallory and Kessler, with a squad of heavily armed soldiers behind them. They all stared at the empty helipad, at the Emperor, at the pile of dust being carried away by the wind. "Is it?" Maeve couldn't finish. "It is done," the Emperor confirmed. "Homelander is no more." Mallory stepped forward, her face unreadable. She looked from the dust to the Emperor. "How?" "Irrelevant. What matters is that the primary threat is eliminated. The rest of Vought's assets will fall without their figurehead." As if on cue, the building shuddered. Not from battle, but from the sound of dozens of windows shattering as terrified Supes, having witnessed their god's annihilation, began to flee in every direction. Some took to the air, others smashed through lower floor exits, running into the waiting cordons of military and police, and the collapse had begun. General Kessler raised a radio to his lips. "All units, execute Operation Clean Sweep. Take them alive if possible. Neutralize if necessary." He lowered the radio, looking at the Emperor with newfound wariness. "You kept your word. You stopped him, and you didn't level the city doing it." "I do not make promises lightly," the Emperor said. He turned to Maeve. "The terms of our agreement stand. Gather those who wish to be something more than Vought's products. Bring them to the location I will provide. The work begins today." He began to walk toward the edge of the building. "Wait," Mallory called out. "Where are you going?" "We have details to discuss. The transfer of knowledge. The protocol." The Emperor paused, looking back. "You have my template. My instructions are embedded within it. Follow them, and you will have your stable, enhanced soldiers. Deviate, and you will create new monsters. The choice, as always, is yours." "And you?" Maeve asked, her voice quiet. "I will be observing," the Emperor said. "This is your world. You must choose its path. I have given you the tools. I have removed the greatest obstacle. The rest is up to humanity." He stepped off the edge of the building, but instead of falling, he vanished, not into the sky, but into a shimmering fold of reality that closed behind him, leaving only empty air. On the ruined helipad, the 3 humans and the former Supe stood amidst the dust of a fallen tyrant, staring at the space where a greater power had just been. "Well," General Kessler said finally, breaking the silence, "what the hell do we do now?" Maeve knelt, touching a finger to the gray dust that had been Homelander. It was cool, inert, harmless. "We do what he said," she murmured, standing. "We choose." In the streets below, the systematic dismantling of Vought International began, but high above, the true question lingered, unanswered. Had they been saved, or had they simply traded one kind of god for another? The fall of Vought International was not an explosion, but a slow, meticulous collapse. The kind that happens when the central pillar holding up a rotten structure is removed. Within hours of Homelander's death, the corporate edifice began to crumble from the inside out. Stock prices, once artificially buoyed by PR and patriotism, plummeted into freefall. Executives, smelling the impending legal and financial ruin, invoked golden parachute clauses and vanished to offshore accounts. The Seven, as a concept, ceased to exist. Queen Maeve became the unlikely point of contact between the remnants of the superhero world and the new powers rising to fill the void. She stood in a converted government warehouse in upstate New York, watching as 27 former Supes, some she recognized, most she didn't, filed nervously past military checkpoint, when they were the ones who had answered her call, the ones who were terrified, repentant, or simply desperate for a way out that didn't end in a prison cell or a grave. General Kessler watched from an observation deck, his arms crossed. "This is a monumental security risk," he grumbled to Grace Mallory beside him. "Putting this many enhanced individuals in one location, one of them panics, and we could have another Homelander situation." "They're not Homelander," Mallory replied, her eyes on the screens showing biometric readouts of each Supie. "Most are low tier, flight, minor strength, enhanced durability. The psychological profiles show fear, not aggression. They're here because they're afraid of us, and because she nodded toward Maeve, vouched for the process. The process. That's what they were calling it, when the genetic template the Emperor had left behind wasn't a physical object, but a psychic imprint. A complex data packet Mallory's scientists had managed to download into a secure server. It detailed a retroviral therapy that would, over the course of 72 hours, systematically rewrite a compound V-enhanced genome back to its baseline human state. It also contained the Awakening Protocol, a method to gently activate latent psychic potential without the physical mutations and psychological instability of Compound V. It was the ultimate bargaining chip. Surrender your V-given powers, undergo screening and training, and you could be awakened into a new role, a guardian, a soldier, something with purpose and control. Or you could take the cure and walk away, human and free. "It's too neat," Kessler muttered. "Too perfect. He shows up, solves our biggest problem, gives us the keys to the kingdom, and vanishes? I don't buy it. There's always a catch." "The catch," Mallory said softly, "is that we now have the means to build an army of loyal, stable super soldiers. And every other government on Earth knows it. The catch is that we have to decide if we're going to be better than Vought, or just a more efficient version of them." Down on the warehouse floor, Maeve approached the first volunteer, a young woman who couldn't have been older than 20, with eyes that darted around the room like a trapped animal. Her file said her name was Chloe. Her power was pyrokinetic. She could start small fires with her hands. She'd been a minor celebrity in the Midwest until she accidentally burned down her parents' house. "The procedure is safe," Maeve said, onto her voice firm but not unkind. "It will feel like a bad flu for a few days. The compound Vi will be purged from your system. You'll be normal. And then," Chloe whispered, "the awakening? Then if you qualify, you train. You learn control. You become something useful instead of something afraid. Chloe nodded shakily and followed a medic toward the sterile treatment bays. One by one, they went. A-Train showed up surprisingly, looking gaunt and twitchy, the side effects of years of Compound V abuse written plainly on his face. He didn't meet Maeve's eyes, just muttered, "I don't want to die like him," and walked toward the bays. Black Noir was already in a maximum security facility, his cybernetics being carefully dismantled by teams of engineers. The man beneath the mask and machinery was someone else entirely. A former soldier named David, his mind shattered by the procedures that had turned him into a silent killer. His fate was uncertain. Starlight had chosen the cure and exile. She'd released a video statement, tearfully apologizing for her part in the Great Lie, before disappearing into a witness protection program somewhere in rural Canada. And Stan Edgar? He was in a federal detention center, charged with treason, illegal human experimentation, and 100 other crimes. He held no press conferences, gave no interviews. He simply sat in his cell, reading, as his life's work was dismantled around him. When asked for comment, he'd only said, "The product has been discontinued. The market will find a new supplier." He was right. 3 weeks after the Dawn duel, Maeve found herself back on the rooftop where she'd first spoken to the Emperor. The city was healing. The physical damage from the battles was being repaired. The news cycles had moved on to fresh scandals. But the world had fundamentally changed. The age of the celebrity Supes was over. A new, quieter, more terrifying age was beginning in government labs and black sites. She wasn't surprised when the air behind her shimmered and the Emperor stepped through, as if from behind an invisible curtain. He wore no armor now, just simple dark robes that seemed to drink the evening light. He looked more like a scholar than a conqueror, but the power radiating from him was, if anything, more intense for its restraint. "It's done," Maeve said, not turning. "Vought is gone. The program is running, and they're calling it the Kessler Protocols. They've already awakened the first batch, a dozen soldiers with low-level telekinesis and enhanced cognition. No mental breakdowns, no god complexes." "And you?" the Emperor asked. "I took the cure," Maeve said, finally facing him. She held up a hand, flexing fingers that were now merely human strong. "The Compound Vi is gone. I'm normal, or I will be once I figure out what that means." The Emperor nodded, unsurprised. "You chose freedom over power, a rare choice." "I had my fill of power," she said, her voice thick with memory. "It was a chain. Now I get to find out who I am without it." She studied him. "You're leaving, aren't you? For good?" "This universe has reached an inflection point," he confirmed. "The path is set. You will either ascend toward order and purpose, or you will fragment into new patterns of chaos. My presence would only distort that choice. You must walk the path yourselves." "Why did you do it?" Maeve asked, the question she'd held for weeks finally escaping. "You could have taken over. You had the power. You had the right, maybe, given what we were. Why help us fix ourselves and then just leave?" For the first time, the Emperor's expression softened, showing something akin to ancient, weary sorrow. "I have made the mistake of control before," he said, his gaze turning inward to millennia of memory. "I built an imperium of 1,000,000 worlds, united humanity under a single banner, and forged an empire meant to last forever. And in doing so, I created dependencies, rigidities, a stagnation that ultimately birthed horrors worse than any external threat." He looked back at her, his eyes like dying stars. "A species must earn its destiny. It cannot be gifted by a god, however well-intentioned. I gave you the tools. I removed a cancer. The rest is your burden to bear. That is the only way it means anything." He extended a hand. On his palm rested a small, crystalline data chip that glowed with soft internal light. "This contains the full scope of my knowledge. Sciences lost to your history, philosophies of governance, warnings of paths that lead to ruin. It is not a blueprint, but a library. Use it or ignore it. The choice, as ever, is humanity's." Maeve took the chip. It was warm. "Where will you go?" "There are other universes," he said. "Other humanities, fallen into other patterns of error and promise. My work is never done." He offered her a final, slight nod. "You fought with honor, Anissa. Remember that strength comes in many forms. The strength to hold power and the strength to let it go. You have demonstrated both. That is a legacy greater than any empire." The air around him began to ripple, the fabric of reality thinning. He didn't vanish in a flash of light or a crack of thunder. He simply faded, becoming less substantial, until he was a golden afterimage against the darkening sky, and then nothing at all. Maeve stood alone on the rooftop, the cool chip in her hand, the city lights beginning to sparkle below. It was over. The golden giant, the ancient emperor, the savior and the threat, he was gone. All that remained was the world he'd left behind, scarred, frightened, but undeniably free. In a nondescript government office, Grace Mallory watched the final satellite feeds showing the rooftop, and the sensors had detected a massive but contained psionic surge, and then nothing. The Emperor's unique energy signature had winked out of existence. "He's gone," she said into the secure phone. General Kessler's voice came through, tense. "For good?" "I believe so." He kept his word. All of it. There was a long pause on the line. "The first awakened unit is fully operational," Kessler said finally. "They're impressive, disciplined, loyal. Everything Vought promised and failed to deliver." He hesitated. "It's a hell of a weapon we've been given, Grace." "It's not a weapon, Sam," Mallory replied, her eyes on the screen now showing the warehouse where former Supes were learning to be human again. "It's a test, one we're going to be taking for the rest of our lives." She hung up and leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. The world was quieter now. Safer, perhaps. But in the silence left by the departure of gods, she could hear the whispers of all the difficult, human choices that were now hers to make. And in a grimy basement bar in Brooklyn, Billy Butcher raised a glass of cheap whiskey to the television screen, which was replaying the official government announcement about the new human advancement protocols. "To the golden bastard," he toasted the empty air. "You killed the right monsters. Hope you're happy." Huey, sitting beside him, frowned. "Do you think he was happy?" Butcher drained his glass. "Dunno, mate. Don't care. He's gone. We're still here, and the world's still full of bastards who need killing." He signaled for another drink, a familiar grim fire back in his eyes. "Just means we get back to proper work. No more gods. You're no more devils, just people. And I know how to kill people." The work, it seemed, was never done. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like it might be work that mattered. The Emperor of mankind came to the boy's universe as a force of nature, an unstoppable tide of ancient power and unyielding will. He found a world where humanity's potential had been commodified, corrupted, and leashed to corporate profit. He saw gods who were merely celebrities and heroes who were prisoners of their own power. He did not conquer. He did not rule. In the end, He performed a precise, brutal surgery. He excised the tumor. Homelander, the ultimate expression of Vought's poisonous philosophy. He handed the scalpel to the patient, humanity itself, in the form of knowledge and a choice. His legacy is not an empire, but a vacancy. A silence where a deafening, narcissistic power once screamed. He proved that the seemingly unbreakable chains of corporate control could be shattered, not by anarchy, but by a greater, more disciplined power. He demonstrated that even the most corrupt systems have pressure points, and that sometimes salvation comes not from within, but from outside all understanding. The world he left behind is fractured, uncertain, and terrified of the new tools it now possesses. It is a world where power must be earned through discipline, not purchased in a vial. It is a world where the question is no longer, who is the strongest, but what will we build with the strength we have? The Emperor is gone, but his shadow lingers in every government lab exploring psychic awakening, in every former Supes learning to live as a human, in every citizen wondering if the age of heroes was a lie they're better off without. He came as a king, acted as a surgeon, and departed as a teacher. Whether his lessons lead to a golden age or a new kind of tyranny is the story humanity must now write for itself. The battle of gods is over. The struggle of people has just begun.